health or substance abuse. I mean, in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that we use in our profession, the DSM has substance abuse as one of the mental disorders. So there's a little bit of a weird juxtaposition where we say, well, it's mental health or it's substance abuse. Like I have yet to meet someone who has a standalone substance abuse problem. It just hasn't happened yet. Show me that person, and I'll show you somebody who's not yet uncovered another layer. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
Part of that is like the minute I quit doing drugs, I saw my mental health actually
improve.
So
sure,
absolutely, I believe.
Yeah, there's a chicken and egg battle there. I mean, like, do you get pushed into doing drugs at age 13 because you're getting bullied, and that is like depressing you, so you reach for the drugs to get out, or do you reach for the drugs to try to be cool because you're not like, who cares? Yeah. Like for me, it really is a who cares. Like, where are you now, and where do you want to be? Yeah. Later, we can have a hair splitting debate about the origins of it, but right now you're struggling, you're suffering, you're miserable. Do you really want to stay struggling, suffering, and miserable, or do you want to like get somewhere else? Let's work on that. And later, when you're in a healthier spot, we can unravel all the philosophical ins and outs of how it came to be.
It's funny because families ask me, "Come meet with my kids and tell me what's wrong with them and stuff." I'm like, well, until we get rid of the drugs and figure out is that causing the mental health, or are they just really messed up?
There's a thing these days for the listening audience, because you guys, I'm sure, are aware of it. There's a philosophy that says housing first, and housing is seen as one of those basic needs. And without a house, it's really hard to like put anything else into place, which is true. I mean, you need a home address to mail your check to if you want a job, for example. So there's some merit to that. A lot of resources, but for me and a lot of us in the clinical community, what you just touched on is primary. Got to get rid of the substances so we know who you are, and sometimes that means psychotropic medication. From I don't know how many kids that I've worked with / staffed or supervised where they've just been passed from medication to medication to medication, and they get to age 15 or 16 and they're so fouled up on medications that they don't know who they are. Yeah. And I'm not an MD, and I need to like trot that out there as a qualifier, and I'll say, that being the case, go back to your doctor and check. But I'm advocating that you go get titrated off these things. Yeah. I'll keep working with you and I'll keep talking to you. But if you don't know who you are because you've been medicated since 9 and you went through all this developmental period under the influence of psychotropic prescription medication, I don't know that we're going to get a whole lot of progress out of talk therapy. So let's get a clean baseline of who you are first, absent the Zoloft and the lithium and the whatever else you're on. And then we'll start moving forward. And it's amazing, the response to the families is like, thank God we've never heard anybody talk like that before. Yeah. We've sort of known it, but we didn't want to argue with the doctor, right?
That's what I had to do, but I didn't start getting all those medications until I was 21, 22, but I got a ridiculous amount of medications. And then once I completely stopped everything, my mental health went way up.
Yeah. Sure.
And, I mean, it changed my life. Now I won't take anything, and it's still I'd still have doctors. Well, why don't you take this? No, I'm good. Well, and if you think back, I mean, the history of pharmacology is pretty young in the pantheon of human existence. We've only been prescribing people drugs to help them in the last 100 years or less, and it's interesting to me. And I'm going to birdwalk this a little bit. To watch as we get more precise with the levers that we flip in the brain, and it's all theory anyway. There's no real practical use yet. It's because every drug will do something different to a different person. We only have theoretical application. But as we get more precise with the pharmaceuticals that we use and the levers that we flip in the brain, the less precise we get with how we treat it, if that makes sense. So we're throwing drugs at people saying this will help alleviate your symptoms and maybe your problem. But I'd rather get more precise as to the origins of the problem, which sounds counterintuitive to what I just said earlier. But as a family systems trained person, I can reasonably say that most of what you're dealing with present day arose somewhere in your past and you failed to deal with it. You shoved it down, you bottled it out, whatever. And I would rather not be flipping levers in the organ that is the brain and be wrestling with bigger psychological, emotional issues from your past or the way that you perceive the world or whatever lens you're using to view it, because that helps to advance healing more rapidly and at a deeper level
than just symptom treatment. I say frequently that I'm not about symptom resolution, I'm about problem resolution. And for me, the way that I view most people walking into the clinical office, they're struggling with a symptom. The symptom just has a name that I diagnose. It has a code that goes off to insurance for billing. But if we alleviate your anxiety and we don't alleviate where your anxiety originated, something else takes its place. Depression steps in. We alleviate your depression and alcoholism steps in. And we alleviate your alcohol and something else. So we're playing therapeutic whack-a-mole. And what we need to do is like get you to tolerate emotion, or we need to get you to reconcile those broken relationships, or, you know, we need to get you anchored to sense of self, you know, something much more macro, but yet much deeper and more precise than just the, hey, what drug can we flip your way to get you to focus in school? So that's my soapbox, but it seems to work. So back to the politics and policy, because I want to wrap this up. We're a little over an hour now, and as fascinating as it is, I'm sure the listening audience, I want to ask one question, and it's going to branch off into a myriad solutions, I'm sure. But what's the solution as you guys see it? Magic wand time. We've heard about there's lots of resources available. There's lots of resources being spent. But how do we fix homelessness? Pregnant pause.
How do you fix? So when I first took over the shelters, I was like, I'm going to end homelessness in Reno. And I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but we're not going to. There's always going to be homelessness in our society. There's people, like we said earlier, that just choose that's the way they want to live. Mm-hmm. We've put people in houses through our Restart program, and within months they're back at the shelter. And some of that may be due to maybe someone that has been in prison their whole life that's been confined to walls, and they're just not willing to live in it. It's too traumatic to them to experience that.
There seems to be a solution there, though, too, right? We just help them recover and learn to work in that capacity, right? And that means more people like me, probably.
So, I mean, there you just nailed it right there. Is we don't have enough mental health. Shortage. We don't. We need more providers. We need our case managers. My one case manager in the women's shelter, her caseload's 50 people. My case manager, not that everybody in our overflow shelter wants case management because it's optional, but but she's pushing 100 caseload of 100 people. My case managers in the men's shelter, I just hired a new case manager, is pushing 41 people. So I mean, really, if you want to start making some headway, we need more people like you and more case managers to start advocating and helping individuals with the issues that are facing them. So absolutely, you can't take that person that's been in prison and heal them or get them into a place where they're actually because like you talked about the housing first model, and I'm not in our community because of the lack of case management. You know, it may work in Washington where you have the Gates Foundation that's funding the whole thing, and you can have an abundance of case managers, and a caseload's maybe 20 people, but not here in Reno, Nevada. It just doesn't work. I think one of the worst decisions that was ever made in U.S. history was back in the 80s when Reagan closed all the mental health institutions, and I think that makes him one of the worst presidents ever. Everyone thinks he's so wonderful, and that we had a booming economy, but he took all the patients that needed help and shoved them out into the streets and left it up to the cities and the municipalities to take care for him, and we don't have the money to.
Yeah, we're really still struggling with that, especially if you go up to NAMS or SNAMS down in Vegas. The acronym Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services or Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. It's the state of Nevada's hospital system, basically for the mentally ill. But we can't keep people in hospitals in perpetuity. Or even for long periods of time anymore because it's against the law. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And so I see that every day. And if you go back and look at what happened when all those were closed, you'll see that violent crime, homelessness, domestic violence, drug and alcohol addiction all skyrocketed during that period of time. So, I mean, that's another solution. I think that, and I don't know this for sure, but one of the reasons they say that they shut all these down was because they're inhumane. Well, we should have fixed them.
Yeah, make it humane. Don't close them.
Don't close them. That'd be like closing down all the prisons in the state of Nevada and saying, you guys have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that going to do for our society?
I guess I'm trying to get a handle on, is it getting worse? We hear it's worse. I don't know. So. I don't know what worse means.
We'll know after January 31st once we do the point in time count, but I think it does. I can tell you when I first took over the shelters, 5 years ago, we didn't need a 365-day-a-year overflow shelter. We didn't need we have a tent in our parking lot that holds 60 additional beds that is open for 4 months out of the year. I never saw 600 people a night.
Is that just a function of population growth, or is it disproportionate to that?
It's a little bit of everything. I think, I talked to a gentleman the other night, and I said, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, why wouldn't I be here? I get a government check for $700 a month. I get free room and board. I get free washer and dryers. I get free food." He's like, "You guys take really good care of us."
So part of it is, if we're getting in the chicken or egg thing, is like, does a booming economy with a rising housing costs and low unemployment rate yield more homelessness, or does resources thrown at homelessness beget taking advantage of homeless resources?
Like I said, I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, obviously, a booming economy isn't really good for the person that struggles and is trying to make rent at $1,300 for a one-bedroom, making $12 an hour.
You stepped forward like you were going to say something.
No, I was just leaning forward. I was really interested in what you guys were saying.
I do have to get going here soon. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it.
Can we do it again? This is kind of fun. I kind of like this. I have my own radio show with Eddie, and this is like I like this.
What was yours called?
Recovery Brothers with Grant Denton.
Nice. Yeah, mine was called Mental Matters, just with me. And then I had regular people on as guests, broadcast all 6 people that were listening in the greater 90-mile radius of the broadcast. You mentioned Grant Denton earlier, Austin. Is he working with you guys, or is he doing? What does he do for advocacy?
He's the operations manager for the Downtown Reno Partnership, so the ambassador program. So he oversees all the ambassadors.
Okay. And I haven't met Grant, but I know that he was on the Reno Dads podcast. So if you're listening, you can listen to go to renodads.com, and you can, if you're a dad listening to this, you get lots of Reno Dads resources, but they may be applicable in your community, wherever you are. And you also mentioned Daniel Fred at the outset. Daniel's a friend from a long, long time ago, and he teaches the CASAT program up at UNR. It's the Center for Application of Substance Abuse Technologies, is that CASAT acronym. And Daniel's also in recovery, and he's very proud about it, and he's got some really cool stories to tell too. So thank you both for coming. Thanks for carving out time. I think this is really beneficial. At least I always hope everything we do is beneficial. I think it's cool because I think whatever comes out of my mouth is cool. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it. On behalf of the Noggin Notes team and the Zephyr Wellness family, I wish you all great mental wellness. Bye.